This is Intro to Chemistry Lightning Round Part 2. For question 16, it asks which of the following exhibits dipole attractions. So, when we see dipole, we're thinking polar. So, for a structure to be polar, it either has to have a lone pair or the surrounding elements or compounds have to be the same. So, when we look at option A, we see that there's a lone pair, meaning that it's polar. And that means that option A is our answer, but just to be sure, you can look at the other ones, and this is nonpolar. This is nonpolar because there's no lone pairs on the central atom, and it's surrounding by the same oxygen. And then for option D, there's no lone pairs and hydrogens are surrounding the carbon. So the correct answer would be A. For 17, it says from the diagrams below, which represents a pure substance of diatomics. So when we think of diatomic, we're going to think of elements that there are two of. And there is specific diatomics on the periodic table. But in this question, you don't necessarily have to know the specific diatomics. You just have to know what a diatomic is. And it's just any element, and there's two of them. So when we look at X, we see that there are two different kinds of elements together. So that would be a compound. And it is a pure substance, but it's not of diatomics, it's of compounds. For Y, there are two like things combined together, and it's a bunch of them in there, so that would be a pure substance. So Y would be a pure substance of diatomics. And then you could look at Z and see that that is not a pure substance, because yes, this is a diatomic, and yes, this is a diatomic, but there's two different types of diatomics in there, and it's not a pure substance. So the correct answer would be C, Y. For question 18, it says from the diagrams below, which contains a mixture. So, like in the previous question we talked about, this is a pure substance. This is a pure substance. This would be a mixture because it contains two different diatomics. So the correct answer would be D. So for question 19, it asks which of the following is a physical change. A physical change is something that can be easily reversed, and it's often just a state change. So when we look at these options, melting ice is a state change because you're going from a solid to a liquid. And so option C would be the correct answer, melting ice. For 20, it asks which of the following is the correct Lewis dot symbol for aluminum. So aluminum has 3 valence electrons, and a Lewis dot symbol is just where you write the element and you go around writing how many valence electrons there are. So for aluminum, there's 3, so there's 3 dots. So the correct answer would be A. For question 21, it asks how many grams are in 8.1 times 10 to the 23rd atoms of carbon C. So you first start with the 8.1 times 10 to the 23rd atoms carbon. You draw this post thing to help set up the problem, and you're going to use, to convert from atoms to moles, you have to use Avogadro's number, which is a number that you should know by memory, to be 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms on the bottom, and you do 1 mole on the top. And then you write 1 mole over here. And then because we have to find how many grams. To convert from moles to grams of carbon, you have to use the molar mass of carbon. So you're going to look at the periodic table and you're going to look under the element symbol and you're going to find the molar mass, which for carbon is 12.01 grams. And then when you multiply across and then divide by these two multiplied together, you're going to end up getting 1.6 grams. And it's 1.6 rounded to 1.6 because given our problem, we're given 8.1 times 10 to the 23rd, and that has two significant figures. So our answer is going to have two significant figures. So the correct answer would be D. So for question number 22, it asks, what are the products of the following acid-base neutralization reaction? So when we look at this reaction, we see that we have hydrogen and fluorine together being added to sodium and OH. So we know for sure that one of our products is going to be water, which is H2O. And now we're just trying to find the second product being produced. So when we look at our reactants, we see that we have 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen, and that's being taken care of by having water as a product. So the only 2 things left are the fluorine and the sodium. So our second product is going to be NaF. So the correct answer for this would be C. For 23, it says classify the following reaction. So when we look at our answer choices, we can tell that it's not going to be a decomposition reaction because 2 things are being reacted and they form 2 products, so that wouldn't make sense. We know that it's not a combination reaction because when we look at this, 2 things are being reacted to form 2 products. Nothing's being combined there. And it's not a double displacement reaction, which only leaves a combustion reaction. And an easy way to tell if it's a combustion reaction is we have oxygen as a reactant and we have CO2 and water as products. And that can clue you into combustion reaction. So the correct answer would be B. So for question 24, it says object A has a specified heat value of 0.6323, and object B has a specific heat value of 1.184. Which object will heat up faster if exposed to the same amount of energy? So when we look at this, we have to look at the values, and we see that object A has a lower specified heat value compared to object B. So since this is the case, object A would heat up faster because if you have a lower specific heat value, the object will heat up faster than if the specific heat value was larger. For 25, it says, which of the following accurately represents an exothermic process? An exothermic process is where heat is being released. And an easy way to remember this is exothermic has the exo, and just remember it as heat is exiting the reaction. For 26, it says, based on the diagram provided, read the instrument to the correct number of significant figures. So when we look at this diagram, we see that there is a 70 value and an 80 value. So we know that the first digit is going to be a 7. And we also have to realize like where this line is, and we read like at the bottom part. And we see that every one of these lines is 1, so that's 1, 2, 3. So you know that there's a 3. And then you have to go to one decimal place that is uncertain, so you're just making an estimated guess for what that value could be. So in this case, you might want to say that the estimated guess is 0 since it's directly on the third line above the 70. So we can say that it's going to be 73.0 milliliters. So the correct answer is going. So for question 27, it says if the KEQ of a system is calculated to have a value of 0.0222, would the reaction be proceeding A, forward, B, reverse, or C, at equilibrium? So 0.0222 is less than 1, so the reaction would be going in the reverse direction. And that's just something you have to know, that if the KEQ is less than 1, it's in the reverse direction. So the correct answer would be B. So for question 28, it says determine the osmolarity of a 0.20 molarity NaOH solution and state if the solution would be isotonic, hypertonic, or hypotonic in a solution of osmolarity equaling 0.30. So for this, we have to know the equation OSM equals MI. So to find the value that's going to replace this I, we do the charges. So Na has a +1 charge, and you're adding it to OH, which has a -1 charge. So altogether, you're going to add these together, and you're not even going to look at the signs on this. In this case, you're just going to look at the number of the charge. So here there's a 1, and it's being added to a 1 here. So total, you're going to have 2. So then we plug in our values into the formula. So OSM equaling 0.20 m NaOH being multiplied by 2, which is going to equal 0.40 OSM. And since the 0.40 OSM is greater than 0.30 OSM, which is the solution, then this is going to be hypertonic. So it's going to be option C is going to be the correct option, because our answer was 0.40, and it's hypertonic because it's greater than the 0.30, which is the osmolarity of the solution. So for question 29, it asks which element forms a -2 charge as an ion. So when we look at our periodic table, our first option choice is beryllium. So when we go here and we look for beryllium, we see that it's right here. And this column has a charge of +2, so that would not make any sense. Our next choice is oxygen. And oxygen is right here, and that row has a charge of -2. So we don't even have to look at the other options because oxygen is our correct answer. For number 30, it's asked what is the mole-to-mole ratio between N2 and NH3 in the following reaction. So here we look at N2 and we look at the coefficient in front of it, which is a 1. And then we look at NH3, which has a coefficient of 2. So the ratio is just going to be 1 to 2. So the correct answer is C.